Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're listening to this. I'm the Shredder, and the opinions I'm about to express, as always, are my own. And I want to talk about the announcement by the UK government that they're going to ban social media for the under 16s come 2027. And there's a couple of reasons I wanted to discuss this. One was after watching the quite frankly awful announcement video from Keir Starmer, where he sits in a hoodie and he does his best impersonation of Steve Buscemi, where he says, "How do you do, fellow kids?" And it was so disingenuous and dishonest. It was absolutely ridiculous. The other was after I listened to James O'Brien discuss this on his LBC radio show, where he said this was probably going to be Keir Starmer's greatest legacy. But he also indicated, he intimated that there's no legitimate argument really against a ban on social media for the under 16s, which I completely disagree with them on. In fact, a lot of the rhetoric I've heard from people who support the ban on the under 16s, it very much smacks of when Peter Kyle, he was the technology minister at the time that the Online Safety Act came into effect. He said that if you didn't support the Online Safety Act, you were on the side of predators like Jimmy Savile. This was despite the fact that there are absolutely a number of legitimate reasons to be opposed to the Online Safety Act. But there was also, on top of this, a statement from Esther Guy, the mother of the murdered trans teenager Brianna Guy. Now, she had supported the Online Safety Act, and she's also supported the ban on social media for the under 16s, saying this could save so many children's lives. Now, I want to make clear this is not an attempt to dogpile on Esther Guy. I absolutely condemn some of the statements I've seen on other social media platforms, such as Blue Sky, where people have said she's gaslighting the nation, that she's exploiting the death of her daughter. I absolutely condemn those because the fact is, Esther Guy had other reasons on top of this to be in favor of a ban on social media. It wasn't just the death of her daughter. She gave an interview to the BBC, for example, where she pointed out that Brianna Guy, when she would come home from school, would access on social media posts that were glorifying self-harm and eating disorders, which unfortunately Brianna was known to have self-harmed. This would not have helped when dealing with the relentless bullying that she went through at school. And also, if you consider, if for anyone who remembers the case of her murder, the girl who was involved in that had tried to poison Brianna with, I believe it was ibuprofen gel tablets, and was hoping it was going to cause organ failure on Brianna's part, and it would be ruled as suicide because Brianna had previously attempted suicide and self-harmed. So I understand why Esther Guy would have some issues with social media, but with all due respect to Esther Guy, social media was absolutely not the cause of Brianna Guy's death. And it was also not completely destructive towards her. I mean, if anything caused Brianna Guy's death, it was the hatred of trans people that was allowed on those platforms. If anything had contributed to her mental health issues, it was the hateful content that she discussed that was allowed to be on those platforms. Um, I mean, again, it was, yeah, hatred of trans people on social media probably did help radicalize her killers. But the teenage boy who bought the knife that was used to murder Brianna was also obsessing over horrific materials about death and murder he found on the dark web, which, when he combined that with his transphobia, he was saying things like he wanted to know if Brianna would scream like a man or a girl. Um, there was so much more at play there. But let's be honest, going over the bigger picture, the government announcement on banning social media for the under 16s is simply papering over the real issues, which is that social media has been so poorly regulated for years to where it's got to the state that it is now. And this is quite frankly Keir Starmer signalling very loudly and clearly that he's afraid to stand up to the likes of Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg, or at the very least, he won't stand up to Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, how on earth do you make an announcement with a video that Keir Starmer put out, where he looked like one of those people who, come to your school to give an anti-drug or a sex education talk that nobody listens to. And he talks about keeping kids safe from hateful content, and of all sites to post it to, which one does he pick? Twitter. I mean, the fact that the government still posts on Twitter is itself a horrendously bad joke. I mean, we're talking about the same Twitter that is owned by Elon Musk that actively promotes neo-Nazi posts, has been used to encourage far-right riots, and has been one of the biggest platforms for producing and sharing revenge porn and child sexual abuse images. And I'm not even just talking about the stuff that the Grok AI system was producing, not that long ago. I mean, let's remember, cast your mind back. Elon Musk reinstated the account of somebody who uses the handle Dom Lucra, they had taken stills from a video they'd found on the dark web of a toddler being graphically sexually abused. And Musk reinstated this person's account, completely overruling his online safety team. I mean, the only way the optics of this could have been any worse is if they said, well, who's a famous face we can get to front this campaign that people would respect? I know, let's go for Hugh Edwards. I mean, I also find it quite ironic that in this video, where Keir Starmer just lies and says he'll take on the social media companies, which he's failed to do so up until this point, he's not going to do it afterwards. But he says that kids had it easier and were happier when he was growing up in the 1970s. Now, let's cast your mind back. The 1970s was a time where casual racism, sexism, homophobia, and ableism was commonplace and accepted, which a lot of people on social media seem to yearn to return to that era if you judge the way that they've posted about ethnic minorities, about women, about neurodivergent people, about disabled people, gay people, trans people, etc. Anybody who frankly isn't a middle-aged heterosexual white male. But I mean, this ban is going to do quite a lot of harm to kids than it is, in ways of protection. I mean, think about kids who are living in rural isolation. How do they keep in touch with people? Social media. How do they make friends? In a lot of cases, social media. Think about kids who they don't have a lot of friends at school because they've got very niche interests. They don't get along with the other kids because they don't have the same interests, or hobbies. They're maybe into things like, I don't know, slot cars, model trains, building models, painting, comic books, niche video games, old movies, Monty Python, that kind of thing. What would they normally do, outside of school? Well, they would probably find other groups on social media of people who share the same interests and make friends that way. You're now telling those kids, oh, by the way, that option for you is no longer available. But the other two groups of kids that it's really going to harm are neurodivergent kids and LGBTQ plus kids. And look, I know several kids from my personal and professional life who have got autism and other learning difficulties, who they find it much easier to communicate over social media rather than communicate with people in person. And that could be because they're socially awkward. It could be that they're nonverbal. It could be that they have a really bad stutter or a speech impediment that makes verbal communication a problem, or they just find really embarrassing, or a whole host of other reasons. LGBTQ plus kids, though, I mean, they might not have gay or trans friends in their peer group and feel really isolated as they start to find and embrace themselves. They discover their gender or their sexuality. And more than a few have found through social media resources and networks of people who have been through that experience, or they've even been able to connect with others in their own age group who are finding themselves, or maybe have already done so, and they're supporting each other. I mean, one transgender teenager who did just that would be none other than Brianna Guy, who through social media, I mean, she was able to connect and regularly talk to other trans girls in Nottingham, in Liverpool, in Scotland, in Germany, and so many other places in the UK and beyond, where they would all share their experiences. They would talk about trans affirming medical care. They would talk about life in general, but it was a positive support network that she would have been denied under this announcement. That was a good that social media was able to provide to somebody like Brianna Guy. And had Brianna Guy still been alive, I mean, she would now just be, I think, a few months shy of her 20th birthday. But it means that she would not be in a position to, going forward, share her own experiences with other young trans girls who are struggling with the same issues of isolation and bullying that she dealt with. I mean, and let's be clear, most adults who talk to these kids about their experiences of being gay, of being trans, of being non binary, of being bisexual, of being asexual, they're not out there to groom kids. Just as other adults who spoke to kids about these kind of things in the days before social media were not out there to groom kids either. It was about telling kids, hey, what you're going through is completely normal. There's nothing wrong with you. This is, my personal experience of how I dealt with it when I was your age. It's about helping kids realizing that they're not alone and there is nothing wrong with them. I mean, and I predict that much like the aftermath of the UK Online Safety Act, which, let's remember, I mean, undermined what, about 2 decades of online safety campaigning, where we were telling people, hey, don't hand over your ID to less than scrupulous websites. Oh, but now you have to hand over your ID to these websites if you want to continue using them. I mean, it blocked LGBTQ plus websites. It blocked suicide prevention resources. It blocked information on drug and alcohol abuse. It undermined, again, like I said, nearly 2 decades of online safety campaigning. And all it did was see a spike in VPN usage. And that's what's going to happen, very similar to Australia, where kids have been getting around their social media ban through the use of VPNs. Although, if Liz Kendall is to be believed, then the UK government's coming after VPNs next. But why did the government not announce proper crackdowns on social media, I don't know, such as properly taxing them and regulating them, similar to how traditional media is? I mean, the answer is quite simple, is that we've got an analog government trying to legislate in a digital age. But here's an example. YouTube could be regulated to crack down on the number of crypto and Forex scam adverts that are allowed to be broadcast, or the fake game adverts like Hero Wars that are allowed to be broadcast. I mean, since YouTube is now readily viewed by as many people through their TVs as it is on computers and phones, why are the type of scams, such as, I don't know, the fake trading adverts for Greg Sicker, that would see Ofcom and the Advertising Standards Agency heavily sanction a traditional network, still being permitted on YouTube? I mean, regulation as a broadcaster would require YouTube to stop promoting certain things that are dangerous to children. Things like baking videos, which have got voiceovers talking about horrific stories of sexual assault. It would require them to stop promoting things like 5-minute crafts when they put out really dangerous, stuff, life hacks, quote unquote, aimed at kids. Things like the use of lighters, things like the using hot glue unsupervised, things like using vodka for a craft, for a minor of all things, or things like dyeing strawberries white using bleach. I mean, this kind of thing would stop being promoted. Or hell, they'd have to be very careful about which influencers they promoted to children. So you couldn't have promoted to teenagers in so-called influencers who have carried out scams such as running online casinos, such as T Martin and Pro Syndicate. I mean, Facebook could also be held to some standards similar to news websites such as The Guardian or the Daily Mail, or The Times, or the BBC, or, take your pick. And fraudulent posts, blatant lies, and scam advertising could be heavily curtailed with the risks of financial penalties. There could also be regulations against the algorithms on Facebook promoting harmful content from the far right, as they often do. I mean, I'm personally getting quite sick of the amount of pro MAGA and pro reform posts I get dumped into my Facebook feed, which people have paid to promote to a wider audience. I'm also sick of the huge number of scam adverts from pages that pretend to be other companies selling products I might be interested in, but are designed really to steal people's debit and credit card information. Which, whenever you report to Facebook, they dismiss all the fraud reports and say, "Oh no, this page did nothing wrong." When you see posts of just utter racism, like, send all black people back to where they came from, that kind of shit, you report that. No, this page did nothing wrong. When you see kill all the gays, report the page. No, this page did nothing wrong. Facebook should be held to account. It should have to deal with these kind of reports, not just dismiss them outright. And I can safely say, on Facebook, I don't see much in terms of hateful shit posting from teenagers. If anything, all the stuff I am seeing is mostly from older men, mostly over the age of 50, or bots which are operated by people overseas, which share AI slop with easily disproven racist lies attached to them. And I've already mentioned Twitter, but let's be frank, any government with a shred of decency and courage would have announced the immediate blocking of that website in the UK the moment it started sharing child sexual abuse material and revenge porn. Instead, what did Keir Starmer do? He took Elon Musk at his word that he would disable the system that allowed those images to be generated and uploaded, but then said nothing when that service was just simply moved to one that you would have to pay for. I mean, Keir Starmer also seemed to back down when he was threatened with trade tariffs by the United States should he not allow Elon Musk's website to continue to make child sexual abuse material readily available to the feed of everybody in the UK. I mean, if you can block the websites of Russia Today and Sputnik News because of the harm they can cause, then Twitter should be right up there with them. I mean, hell, the owner of the website openly is calling for race war and the overthrow of the government in this country. But no, our Prime Minister has decided the solution isn't to tackle the problem head on. It's instead to just allow social media platforms to continue to behave as badly as they've done for years and continue to do so now, but just not allow kids and teenagers to see it. Punish the kids, but don't punish the predators and Nazis, and certainly don't punish the companies who allow the predators and Nazis to thrive on those platforms. What an absolute joke. I'm the Shredder. That's my opinion.